Hello. In this video we're going to talk about assigning a value of variables. Now this starts off easy, it gets a little bit trickier, and then the last bit might be confusing, but let's start with the easy stuff. So I can just say that name, and then I use that to mean equals in pseudocode. Name equals Mark, there we go, and I have created that variable for the purpose of pseudocode. So when I use that, that'll work. And by the way, I can always redeclare something. So I can give it a new value, and I can say it's Greg, and now, by the time we get to line 4, that now equals Greg. The old value replaces, the new value replaces the old value. So no great surprises there. When I'm creating a string, I put talking marks around it, and if I was creating something called years old, then I'm just going to put the number, so 53. Now, it assumes that if you put it in, it will detect the type. Some languages do and some don't, but this isn't a real language. This is, as the name says, it's pseudocode. So that would be typed, the assumption would be that's typed as a string. The assumption would be that's typed as an integer. If I would put it as, I don't know, x equals 5.6, it would assume that that's a real number or a float. So that's how we declare it, and you'll notice that I've made a mistake there, that we don't use the equal sign, we use that sign to assign. Well, so far so good. Alright, what if we want to get something from the user? So, let's say we want to know what their name is. At its simplest level, we could just say, name comes from input, like that. So, this mythical program that we're writing would just stop, and when the user types something in, that would be captured as the variable name. And likewise, depending on what we typed in, it would be captured as the type of information that we typed in. Well, that's all well and good, but what we can also do is we can put brackets and talking mark after it. We certainly need the talking marks, the brackets are optional, and say, what is your name? So, the way that you would read this is that the computer would say, what is your name? And then when the user types it in and hits enter, it would be stored as that variable. So we know how to assign it ourselves, and we know how to capture it from the user to get the user to have some input. Well, the third thing that we want to know about, and this is a little bit confusing, is that there's things called scope. Now, I'm not going to try and do a diagram for this, but here's what happens. If I do a function, and we haven't come to functions yet, but it's a mini program, and within that function, I'm using the variable name. And so I think, yeah, the computer knows what the variable name equals. It equals Mark or it equals Greg. Well, that's fine. In that function, it does know that. But if you go out into the larger program, it actually doesn't know it. It's only, there's this thing called scope in some languages where something is only true in the situation in which you created it. And I think of the analogy of a room. If I say x equals 7 in this room, it's true in this room. But if I go out of the atrium, well, it's not true. It wasn't here when I said it. So one way to work with this is that we can declare a variable right out in the open before we go into a function, and then it's changing that thing that's been declared. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say I want to declare this thing called number. I'm going to declare it as an integer, and so now that thing exists. Now, we haven't looked at for loops yet, but I'm going to do one anyway. For I equals, which we express like that, 1 to 10. So that loop is going to run 10 times, and I is going to equal 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, I'm going to have this thing in here called, I'm going to say num equals num plus 2. So every time this runs, it's going to add 2 to this variable called num. So it'll be, I think it'll get up to 20 by the end. Well, once we get out of the loop, if I were to print num, like that, then if I hadn't declared it out here, let's comment that out. So that means that code won't run. So let's talk it through. The loop runs. Num equals num plus 1. Now I'm actually not even sure if we'd need to declare there that num exists. Let's assume we can get away with it. It'd go in that room, yep, num equals 20, and then we go out of that loop and say, what's num equal? I don't know. So that's why we would declare it out here in the open. You don't always have to declare in pseudocode, but it's there if you want it. or not more than the point, it's there if you need it.